A reading from the book of Sirach. My child, conduct your affairs with humility, and you will be loved more than a lover of gifts, a giver of gifts. Humble yourself the more, the greater you are, and you will find favor with God. What is too sublime for you, seek not. Into things beyond your strength, search not. The mind of a sage appreciates proverbs, and an attentive ear is the joy of the wise. Water quenches a flaming fire, and alms atone for sins. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Do we have merciful, humble hearts? And do we trust our Father? At the beginning of this chapter, before our selection, Sirach says something that I'd like us to consider as though from the mouth of God. Children, listen to me, your Father. Act accordingly, that you may be safe. Can we hear that as the context by which and through which God calls us to himself? The urgency with which God calls us to be humble and merciful reflects ancient paternal urgency. Parents at this time formed their children with the knowledge that children, in an even more involved way than today, cared for their parents when they were old, and a poorly formed child would be a poor caregiver. We can see the urgency with which a parent would want to care for a child. God forms us with an urgency, a visceral urgency, no less than that. But also let us call our attention to the way in which God's urgency differs from that of the ancient parent, in that God does not need us. His interest in us is solely to delight in us, to see us live as that version of ourselves which he would call us to be. He didn't need us, but he created us. He fathered us to share in divine life with him, the life of the Trinity. And he longs with this great urgency that we share in that life. How does he want us to share it? To invite Jesus Christ to be Lord of our lives, every minute aspect of our lives, so that we can share in that life most proper, only proper to him. And here we see the need for a humble and merciful heart to be formed in us by this loving Father. A heart which has obstacles to the divine life removed, comfortable with God reaching in and taking out the things that we don't need, things which are not only do we not need, but are properly obstacles to sharing in life with him and trusting him to do that. It overflows that heart in wisdom, divine wisdom, and it overflows also with a completely other-oriented generosity, another divine attribute. A humble and merciful heart includes how we see ourselves, questions like how secure we are in our strengths. If a strength of mine is overlooked, how do I respond? On the other side, my weaknesses with a person I trust. Can I trust? Do I find myself trusting, even with my weaknesses? Am I inclined enough to share my weaknesses with a confessor, a spiritual director, a formator? It also, this humble and merciful heart inclines and has to do with how we relate to others. When I see a problem or a fault in someone else, how often is it their problem? How often is it my problem? With whom and in what contexts do I share positive opinions of others? And the same question with negative opinions. With a humble heart, this humble and merciful heart, one sees oneself as through the eyes of God, the loving Father. How does my view, the question is, of myself, how does my view of myself line up with how God views me? How does his view of my strengths line up with my own views of my strengths? Do I think too highly of myself? Do I think too lowly of myself? The things that I beat myself up for, does God look at me that way? The things I give myself a pass for, does God look at me that way? If we want to be in line with God's views for us, we have to change. This is the Christian message. It's not the modern understanding of self-improvement. This is healing, brothers and sisters. This is conversion. This is a change from our lives to the life of Christ, the divine life. And now can we consider what powerful healing means are available to us? Jesus tells us that whatever we ask for in his name will not be denied us. Can we think that if Jesus is asked by us for the Holy Spirit to know our faults and failings, to better know ourselves as God knows us, do we think that he will deny that Spirit to us? Allow me to testify that I have found powerful healing. That we ask for the Spirit and bring that to an act of contrition, yes, and an examination of conscience, a habit of that. And can we examine the healing brought about by recorded examinations of conscience brought to the sacrament of penance, of reconciliation, where we ask God for the healing grace to transform our lives more into his? Can we examine the healing opportunity for us in the Eucharist and devout reception of the Eucharist, asking for our lives to be transformed more into that life of Christ? Can we consider the abundant means available to us and the fervent, urgent request for God, from God to us, to change our ways, to change our lives, to have merciful and humble hearts? Do we have those hearts? We will to have them.